For 6 months before my wedding, my ex-boyfriend Marcus had been sending me flowers with notes saying, "You know you belong with me." I ignored them, blocked his number, and focused on planning my future with Michael. But when Marcus showed up at my wedding to publicly humiliate my husband and try to win me back, he had no idea that I had been documenting everything. And the surprise I had waiting for him when I got back from Paris would end his games forever. If you've ever had an ex who couldn't accept that your relationship was over, or someone who tried to sabotage your happiness out of jealousy, please let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. Subscribe if you want to hear more stories about toxic people getting exactly what they deserve. I'm Amanda Brooks. Well, Amanda Chen now, and this is the story of how my ex-boyfriend's obsession with ruining my happiness became the very weapon I used to destroy his entire life. Let me start from the beginning, because understanding Marcus's behavior requires knowing our history together and how a relationship that seemed perfect on the surface became a nightmare of control and manipulation. I met Marcus Donovan when I was 22 years old, fresh out of college with a degree in marketing and communications. I had just landed my first real job as a marketing coordinator at TechFlow, a rapidly growing startup in Seattle's tech scene. I was excited about my career, living in my first apartment and finally feeling like an independent adult. Marcus was 28 at the time, 6 years older and seemingly much more established in life. He worked as a senior sales manager at Pinnacle Solutions, a Fortune 500 consulting firm with offices throughout the Pacific Northwest. Everything about him screamed success: the tailored suits, the BMW M3, the downtown Seattle condo with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Elliott Bay. We met at a networking event for young professionals, one of those after-work mixers where ambitious 20-somethings gathered to make connections and advance their careers. I was nursing a glass of wine and trying to work up the courage to introduce myself to some potential clients when Marcus approached me. "You look like someone who's actually accomplished something interesting," he said with a confident smile. "Most people here are just pretending to be successful." It was a line that should have been a red flag, but at 22, I was flattered by the attention from someone who seemed so polished and self-assured. Marcus had this way of making you feel like you were special, like he had seen something in you that other people missed. "I'm Marcus Donovan," he said, extending his hand, "and you're definitely not in sales, because you look uncomfortable trying to sell yourself to this room full of sharks." I laughed, despite myself. "Amanda Brooks. And you're right, I'm in marketing, not sales. Though I'm not sure there's much difference sometimes." "There's a huge difference," Marcus said seriously. "Marketing is about understanding what people really want and showing them how to get it. Sales is about convincing people they want something they don't need." We talked for 2 hours that night, and I was completely charmed. Marcus was articulate, funny, and seemed genuinely interested in my thoughts and opinions. He asked thoughtful questions about my work, my goals, and my background. When he asked for my number, I gave it to him without hesitation. Our first date was at Canlis, one of Seattle's most exclusive restaurants. Marcus arrived in his BMW wearing a suit that probably cost more than I made in a month, and he treated the entire evening like a production designed to impress me. "I want you to have the best of everything," he told me over dinner. "You deserve to be treated like a queen." The attention was intoxicating. I had dated college guys who split pizza costs and considered dinner at Olive Garden a special occasion. Marcus was operating on a completely different level, and I felt like I was getting a glimpse into a more sophisticated, successful world. Marcus was also incredibly attentive in those early weeks. He would send flowers to my office, surprise me with expensive gifts, and plan elaborate dates that showed he had been paying attention to things I mentioned in passing. When I casually mentioned that I loved live music, he bought tickets to see my favorite band from front row seats. When I said I had always wanted to try rock climbing, He arranged for private lessons at an upscale climbing gym. "How did you remember that I wanted to try this?" I asked during our climbing lesson. "Because everything about you is worth remembering," he replied, and I melted. Looking back, I can see that Marcus was love-bombing me, overwhelming me with attention and gifts to create an emotional dependency. But at the time, it felt like I had found someone who truly valued and cherished me. The physical chemistry was intense, too. Marcus was confident and passionate, and he made me feel beautiful and desired in a way I had never experienced. He would tell me constantly how stunning I was, how lucky he felt to be with me, how he had never met anyone like me. "You're going to spoil me," I told him after he surprised me with weekend trip to Victoria, complete with a luxury hotel suite and dinner reservations at the city's best restaurant. "That's the point," he said, pulling me close. "I want to spoil you so thoroughly that you never want to be with anyone else." It should have been another red flag, but I interpreted it as romantic devotion rather than possessive control. 3 months into our relationship, Marcus started suggesting that we spend more time together. He wanted to see me every night, and he began making comments about my other commitments that suggested he saw them as competition for my attention. "You're going out with your college friends again?" he would ask when I mentioned plans that didn't include him. "Don't you think it's more important to focus on building our relationship?" When I got invited to my coworker Jennifer's birthday party, Marcus was supportive at first. "That sounds fun," he said. "What time should I pick you up?" "Oh, I think this is just a girls' night," I said casually. "Jennifer specifically said she wanted to keep it small and drama-free." Marcus's expression shifted almost imperceptibly. "Drama-free? What kind of drama would I cause?" "None," I said quickly. "I just think she wants to celebrate with her close female friends. You understand, right?" "Of course," Marcus said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Have fun with your girls' night." But that night, Marcus texted me constantly. First, it was sweet messages. "Hope you're having fun, beautiful. Miss you already." Then it became more frequent. "What are you doing now? Who else is there? What time do you think you'll be home?" By 10 p.m., he was calling every 30 minutes. When I finally answered, slightly drunk and laughing with my friends in the background, Marcus's tone was cold. "You sound like you're having a great time without me," he said. "I am having fun," I said, not understanding why that would be a problem. "But I miss you too." "Do you?" "Because you haven't been answering your phone." "Marcus, I'm at a party. I can't be on my phone the entire time." "I just worry about you," he said, his voice softening. "There are a lot of guys at these parties, and you're so beautiful and trusting. I don't want anyone to take advantage of you." The conversation made me uncomfortable, but I pushed the feeling aside. Marcus was just being protective, I told myself. He cared about me and wanted to make sure I was safe. But the pattern continued and escalated. Marcus always had opinions about my friends, my activities, and my choices. He never forbade me from doing anything outright, but he had ways of expressing displeasure that made me want to avoid disappointing him. When I mentioned that I was thinking about taking a weekend photography class, Marcus said, "That sounds interesting, but wouldn't you rather spend our weekends together? We have so little time as it is with our work schedules." When my friend Sarah invited me to be in her wedding party, Marcus was supportive until he learned that the bachelorette party involved a weekend trip to Portland. "A whole weekend?" he said with concern. "Amanda, you know how I feel about you traveling without me. What if something happens? What if your flight gets delayed? What if there's an emergency and I can't get to you?" His concerns always sounded reasonable and caring, but the cumulative effect was that I started avoiding commitments that didn't include him. It was easier to say yes to Marcus than to deal with his worry and disappointment. 6 months into our relationship, Marcus started talking about our future with an intensity that both thrilled and overwhelmed me. He would make comments about when we're married and when we have kids, as if these things were foregone conclusions rather than conversations we should have together. I've been looking at houses in Bellevue, he mentioned casually during dinner one night. There's a beautiful neighborhood with excellent schools, perfect for raising a family. Marcus, I said carefully, don't you think we should talk about these things together before you start making plans? I'm not making plans, he said with a smile. I'm just thinking ahead. Don't you want to know that I'm serious about our future? Of course I do, but I want to be part of the decision-making process. You are, Marcus said, reaching across to take my hand. Your happiness is the most important thing to me. Everything I do is for us. The conversation left me feeling unsettled, but I couldn't quite put my finger on why. Marcus said all the right things, but something felt off about the way he discussed our future, as if my input was optional. Around this time, I started noticing how Marcus interacted with other people, particularly women. At work events or social gatherings, he was charming and confident, but there was an underlying dismissiveness in how he treated women he wasn't trying to impress. When we went to my company's holiday party, Marcus spent the evening networking with the men in attendance while barely acknowledging my female colleagues. When Jennifer, my coworker who had become a close friend, tried to engage him in conversation about his work, Marcus gave polite but clearly disinterested responses. Later that night, I mentioned that Jennifer had seemed excited to meet him. She seems nice, Marcus said dismissively. A little aggressive, though. Some women don't know how to be feminine and professional at the same time. The comment bothered me more than I wanted to admit. Jennifer was one of the smartest, most capable people I knew, and Marcus's assessment of her seemed unfair and misogynistic. I don't think she was being aggressive, I said carefully. She was just being friendly and professional. Amanda, Marcus said, with that patient tone he used when he thought I was being naive. Men and women communicate differently in business settings. What seems friendly to you might come across as pushy to men. It's not her fault. She probably doesn't realize how she's coming across. I wanted to argue, but Marcus had a way of making his opinions sound like objective facts rather than personal biases. 8 months into our relationship, I received a promotion at TechFlow. I was being moved from marketing coordinator to marketing manager with a significant salary increase and the opportunity to lead my own team. I was thrilled. It was validation that my hard work was paying off and a big step toward my career goals. When I told Marcus about the promotion over dinner, his reaction was mixed. That's great, baby, he said, but his enthusiasm seemed forced. More responsibility means longer hours, though. Are you sure you want to take on that much stress? It's not stress, I said, confused by his response. It's an opportunity. I've been working toward this kind of role since I graduated. I know you have, Marcus said carefully. I just want to make sure you're thinking about the big picture. We've been talking about moving in together, maybe starting to plan our future more seriously. A demanding job might make that harder. Marcus, this promotion is part of my future. I'm not going to turn down career advancement because it might be inconvenient for our relationship. Of course not, he said quickly. I'm not suggesting you should. I just want you to think about what you really want long term. The conversation continued along these lines, with Marcus never directly criticizing my career ambitions, but constantly raising concerns about how they might affect our relationship. By the end of the evening, I was second-guessing myself and wondering if accepting the promotion was the right decision. That night, I called my sister Emma, who lived in Portland and had always been my closest confidant. Emma, I said, Marcus is making me feel guilty about my promotion, and I don't understand why. What exactly is he saying? Emma asked. I recounted our conversation, and Emma was quiet for a long moment. Amanda, she said finally, that doesn't sound like a supportive partner. That sounds like someone who feels threatened by your success, but he says he wants me to be happy and successful. What he says and what he does are two different things. A supportive partner would be celebrating your promotion, not questioning whether you should take it. Emma's words stayed with me, and I started paying closer attention to the patterns in Marcus's behavior. I began to see how he consistently undermined my confidence in subtle ways, always framed as concern or love. When I mentioned that I was considering taking a business development course to enhance my new management skills, Marcus said, "Don't you think you should focus on mastering your current role before taking on additional commitments?" When I talked about long-term career goals, Marcus would redirect the conversation to our relationship goals, suggesting that professional ambition might conflict with building a family. I just don't want you to become one of those women who sacrifices everything for career advancement, he said during one particularly frustrating conversation. Success is meaningless if you don't have someone to share it with. 9 months into our relationship, Marcus started pushing more aggressively for us to move in together. He presented it as a natural next step, but his urgency suggested there were other motivations. It makes financial sense, he argued. You're paying rent on your apartment. I'm paying rent on mine. We could get a beautiful place together for less than we're spending separately. But I love my apartment, I said, and I'm not sure I'm ready to live together yet. Why not? Marcus asked, and there was an edge to his voice that I had never heard before. We spend every night together anyway. What's the difference? The difference is that I still have my own space when I need it. Living together is a big step. Amanda, Marcus said, his tone becoming patient and condescending. Don't you think you're being a little immature about this? We're both adults, we're in a committed relationship, and we love each other. Moving in together is what people do when they're serious about their future. The way he framed my hesitation as immaturity rather than reasonable caution was a turning point for me. I realized that Marcus consistently dismissed my feelings and concerns when they didn't align with what he wanted. That weekend, I had lunch with my college friend Lisa, who had noticed changes in my behavior over the past several months. Amanda, she said carefully, I need to ask you something, and I want you to be honest. Are you happy? The question caught me off guard. Of course I'm happy. Why would you ask that? Because you're different, Lisa said gently. You used to be spontaneous and confident. Now you seem anxious all the time. And you always check with Marcus before making any decisions. That's not true, I said defensively. Isn't it? When was the last time you made plans without asking Marcus first? When was the last time you did something just for yourself? I started to argue, but realized I couldn't think of a recent example. Somewhere along the way, I had started running all my decisions through Marcus's filter, anticipating his reactions and adjusting my choices accordingly. Lisa, I said quietly, I think I might be in an unhealthy relationship. What makes you say that? He never says I can't do things, but he makes me feel guilty for wanting to do them. He says he supports my career, but he questions every decision I make about it. He says he wants me to be happy, but he seems threatened when I am happy about things that don't involve him. Lisa nodded knowingly. That sounds like emotional manipulation. He's controlling you without making it obvious that's what he's doing. The conversation with Lisa was a wake-up call. I started researching emotional abuse and manipulation, and I was disturbed by how many of the warning signs applied to my relationship with Marcus. According to the articles I read, emotional manipulation often involved love bombing in the early stages of the relationship, isolating the victim from friends and family, undermining the victim's confidence and decision-making, making the victim feel guilty for having interests outside the relationship, controlling behavior disguised as care and concern. The more I read, the clearer it became that Marcus's behavior was not loving or protective. It was controlling and abusive. I started paying closer attention to how I felt after conversations with Marcus, and I realized that I often felt drained, confused, and second-guessing myself. Our relationship had become a source of stress rather than joy. 10 months into our relationship, I made the decision to end things with Marcus. I knew it wouldn't be easy. Marcus was deeply invested in our relationship and had been planning our future together. But I also knew that I couldn't continue sacrificing my autonomy and happiness for his need to control me. I planned the conversation carefully, choosing a public place where Marcus would be less likely to cause a scene. I met him for coffee at a cafe near his office on a Thursday afternoon. "Marcus," I said after we had ordered our drinks, "I need to talk to you about something important." "Okay," he said with a smile. "You look serious. What's on your mind?" "I think we need to take a break from our relationship," I said as gently as possible. "I need some time to figure out what I want." Marcus's expression shifted from confusion to concern to something harder to identify. "A break?" he said carefully. "Amanda, where is this coming from? I thought we were happy." "I thought we were too," I said. "But I've realized that I've been making a lot of compromises that don't feel healthy to me. I need some space to think about what I really want." "What kind of compromises?" Marcus asked, his voice getting tighter. "I feel like I've been adjusting my entire life around your preferences and opinions. I love you, but I don't think this relationship is bringing out the best in either of us." Marcus was quiet for a long moment, and I could see him processing what I had said. When he spoke again, his tone was different, more calculated. "Amanda," he said slowly, "I think you're just scared of commitment. This is normal. Everyone goes through this phase when a relationship gets serious. You're panicking because you know we're at the point where we need to make decisions about our future." "It's not about commitment," I said firmly. "It's about compatibility. I don't think we want the same things." "Yes, we do," Marcus said, with absolute certainty. "You think you want independence and career success, but what you really want is security and love. I can give you both of those things." The way he dismissed my stated desires and claimed to know what I really wanted was exactly the behavior that had driven me to this conversation. "Marcus," I said, "you're doing it right now. You're telling me that my feelings aren't valid, that I don't know what I want. That's exactly why I need space." "I'm not telling you your feelings aren't valid," Marcus said, his voice getting louder. "I'm telling you that you're confused. There's a difference." "No," I said firmly, "there isn't. You consistently dismiss my concerns and redirect conversations to what you think is best for me. That's not how healthy relationships work." Marcus leaned back in his chair, and his expression became cold and calculating. "Fine," he said after a moment. "If you need space to figure out what you want, take it. But Amanda, understand that what we have is special. You're not going to find someone who loves you the way I do. You're not going to find someone who can give you the life I can give you." "Maybe not," I said, "but I'd rather be alone than be in a relationship where I don't feel like myself." "You'll change your mind," Marcus said with unnerving confidence. "You'll realize that independence isn't as fulfilling as you think it is. And when you do, I'll be here." The conversation ended with Marcus's prediction that I would come to my senses and return to him. His certainty that I would eventually realize my mistake was both infuriating and unsettling. Over the next few weeks, I felt an incredible sense of relief. I hadn't realized how much stress the relationship had been causing until it was gone. I started making plans with friends I hadn't seen in months, took weekend trips without having to justify them to anyone, and rediscovered interests that I had neglected while trying to accommodate Marcus's preferences. But Marcus didn't accept the breakup as final. He continued to text me regularly with messages that were carefully crafted to seem caring rather than intrusive. Hope you're doing well. Take all the time you need to figure things out. Saw something that reminded me of you today. Miss our conversations. No pressure, but I'm here when you're ready to talk. I didn't respond to these messages, hoping he would take the hint and move on. Instead, the messages became more frequent and more pointed. Amanda, I know you're going through something, but shutting me out isn't the answer. I've been patient, but this silent treatment isn't fair to either of us. We need to talk about this like adults. Ignoring me isn't going to make our connection go away. 3 months after our breakup, I blocked Marcus's number and all his social media accounts. I thought this would end his attempts to contact me, but Marcus was more persistent than I had anticipated. He started sending emails from different accounts, each message carefully worded to avoid seeming threatening or inappropriate. Amanda, I understand you need space, but completely cutting off communication seems extreme. I hope you'll reconsider and at least let me know you're okay. I've been thinking about our conversation at the cafe, and I think there were some misunderstandings that we could clear up if you're willing to talk. I miss you every day, but more than that, I'm worried about you. This isolation isn't healthy. I deleted the emails without responding. But Marcus's persistence was beginning to worry me. It had been 3 months since our breakup, and he seemed to be escalating his attempts to reestablish contact rather than accepting that our relationship was over. 6 months after our breakup, I met Michael Chen at my friend Sarah's birthday party. The contrast between Michael and Marcus was immediately apparent. Where Marcus had been overwhelming and intense from the beginning, Michael was patient and thoughtful. Where Marcus had dominated conversations with his opinions and plans, Michael listened carefully and asked thoughtful questions. Where Marcus had been possessive and controlling, Michael was supportive and encouraging. Michael was a software engineer at a growing tech company, and he had a quiet confidence that was completely different from Marcus's aggressive ambition. He was successful in his own right, but he didn't need to constantly prove it or use it to impress people. Our first conversation lasted 2 hours, and I was struck by how easy and natural it felt. Michael was interested in my work, my hobbies, and my thoughts without trying to redirect the conversation to himself or his plans for our future. When he asked for my number, he did so with a casual confidence that suggested he hoped I would say yes, but would be fine if I said no. It was refreshing after months of Marcus's intense pursuit and assumption that I should be grateful for his attention. Michael and I started dating slowly and naturally. He never pushed for more commitment than I was ready to give, and he consistently demonstrated that he valued my independence and autonomy. When I told him about my demanding work schedule, he said, "That sounds exciting. Tell me more about what you're working on." When I mentioned plans with friends that didn't include him, he said, "Have fun. I'll see you when you get back." When I talked about my career goals, he asked thoughtful questions and offered support without trying to redirect my ambitions to fit his vision of our future. The relationship developed organically over several months, and I felt like I was rediscovering who I was outside of the controlling dynamic I had experienced with Marcus. 8 months into my relationship with Michael, I realized I was in love with him. Not the intense, overwhelming feeling I had experienced with Marcus, but a deep, peaceful certainty that we were compatible and brought out the best in each other. Michael told me he loved me a few weeks later, and the conversation was everything my relationship with Marcus hadn't been. We talked about our feelings honestly, discussed what love meant to each of us, and made no assumptions about what the other person wanted. "I love you," Michael said during a quiet moment while we were cooking dinner together. "And I love the person I am when I'm with you. You make me want to be better without making me feel like I'm not good enough as I am." It was exactly what healthy love should feel like. A year and a half into our relationship, Michael proposed. The proposal was thoughtful and personal. He had noticed that I preferred meaningful gestures to grand romantic displays, and he had planned something that was perfect for us rather than impressive to other people. We were on a camping trip in the Olympic Peninsula, something we both loved to do, when Michael suggested we hike to a particularly beautiful viewpoint to watch the sunset. When we reached the spot, he pulled out a ring he had designed himself based on conversations we'd had about what I found beautiful. "Amanda," he said, "I want to spend my life with someone who challenges me, supports me, and loves me for who I am. I want to build a future with someone who has her own dreams and goals and wants me to be part of them, not the center of them. Will you marry me?" I said yes immediately, knowing with absolute certainty that Michael was the person I wanted to spend my life with. We were engaged for 8 months, planning a wedding that reflected both of our personalities and values. Nothing too elaborate or expensive, but meaningful and beautiful. We wanted a celebration that was about our love and commitment, not about impressing anyone or proving anything. The wedding planning process was joyful and collaborative. Michael had opinions about things that mattered to him, but he deferred to my preferences on things I cared more about. We made decisions together, compromised when necessary, and never once had an argument about the wedding that left either of us feeling unheard or dismissed. That's when Marcus reappeared in my life. The first sign that something was wrong came about 6 months before our wedding. I arrived at work one Monday morning to find a bouquet of white roses on my desk. The arrangement was expensive and elaborate, with a card that simply said, "Congratulations on your engagement. Hope you know what you're doing. M." My stomach dropped as I read the card. It had been nearly 2 years since I had heard from Marcus, and I had hoped that he had finally moved on with his life. The fact that he knew about my engagement was unsettling. I threw the flowers away immediately and tried to put the incident out of my mind. Maybe it was just a one-time gesture, I told myself. Maybe seeing that I was engaged would finally convince Marcus that our relationship was truly over. But 2 weeks later, another bouquet arrived. This time, the note said, "You know you belong with me. This is just a phase." The words sent a chill down my spine. Marcus wasn't congratulating me on finding happiness. He was dismissing my relationship with Michael as temporary and asserting some kind of ongoing claim on me. I immediately called building security and asked them to refuse any flower deliveries that weren't from Michael or clearly from legitimate business contacts. But Marcus was creative in finding ways to make his presence known. A week after I blocked the flower deliveries, I found an expensive bottle of wine waiting at the front desk of my apartment building. The note said, "For celebrating when you come to your senses, M." I threw the wine away and asked my building's concierge to refuse packages that weren't from people I had specifically authorized. But Marcus's campaign was just beginning. He started showing up at places he knew I would be. The coffee shop near my office where I often grabbed lunch, the gym where I worked out after work, the grocery store in my neighborhood where I did my weekly shopping. Marcus never approached me directly or tried to start conversations. He would simply be there, watching me from across the room with that same confident smile that suggested he knew something I didn't. He wanted me to know that he was monitoring my activities and that he could appear anywhere at any time. The psychological effect was exactly what he intended. I started feeling anxious and looking over my shoulder everywhere I went. I began varying my routines and avoiding places where I might encounter him, which meant Marcus was successfully disrupting my life without technically doing anything illegal. When I told Michael about Marcus's behavior, he was immediately concerned and supportive. "Amanda, this isn't normal ex-boyfriend behavior," he said. After I described the flowers and the public appearances, "This is stalking." "I know," I said, "but technically, he's not doing anything illegal. He's sending flowers to my workplace, appearing in public places, and not making any direct threats. It doesn't matter if it's technically legal, Michael replied firmly. It's harassment and it's meant to intimidate you. Do you want me to talk to him? No, I said quickly. I think that would just escalate things. He's probably hoping for some kind of reaction or confrontation. Then what do you want to do? I want to document everything, I said, making a decision that would prove crucial later. If Marcus is going to play games, I want evidence of exactly what he's doing. I started keeping detailed records of every incident. I photographed the flower deliveries before throwing them away. I saved every note and card. I documented the dates, times, and locations where I had seen Marcus. I started carrying a small notebook where I recorded every suspicious incident, no matter how minor. Michael was supportive of my documentation strategy, but he was also worried about my stress levels. Amanda, he said one evening as I was updating my Marcus file, I hate seeing you live in fear of this guy. Are you sure you don't want to file a police report? With what evidence? I asked. That he sent me flowers and happened to be in the same public places I was? The police would tell me to call back if he actually threatened me or did something clearly illegal. Maybe you're right, Michael said reluctantly, but I want you to promise me that if his behavior escalates, we'll take more serious action. I promise, I said, but for now, I just want to be prepared in case this gets worse. As our wedding date approached, Marcus's behavior did escalate. 4 months before the wedding, I started receiving emails from accounts with obviously fake names. The subject lines were always vague. Thinking of you. Hope you're well. Important reminder. But the content was clearly from Marcus, written in his distinctive style and containing references to our past relationship that only he would make. The emails were never threatening or explicitly inappropriate. Instead, they were manipulative messages designed to make me question my relationship with Michael. Amanda, I know you think you're happy, but you deserve so much more than what he can give you. You were meant for bigger things than settling for someone safe and ordinary. I've been patient because I love you, but watching you make this mistake is breaking my heart. You know what we had was real. I understand why you chose him. He's safe and predictable, but deep down you know you need someone who can match your ambition and give you the life you deserve. The emails appeared to come from different accounts. amanda.deservesbetter@gmail.com, temporaryrelationship@yahoo.com, come-to-your-senses@hotmail.com, but they were obviously all from Marcus. I saved every email and added them to my documentation file. The pattern was becoming clear. Marcus wasn't just hoping I would change my mind about marrying Michael. He was actively trying to undermine my confidence in my relationship and my decisions. 3 months before the wedding, Marcus somehow obtained my new phone number and started sending text messages. Like the emails, the texts were carefully crafted to seem caring rather than threatening. Amanda, I hope you know I only want you to be happy, but I can't stand by and watch you throw your life away. You used to have such big dreams. Don't let anyone convince you to settle for less than you deserve. I know you're trying to move on, but what we had doesn't just disappear. You can't fake the kind of connection we shared. I blocked each number as soon as Marcus texted from it, but he seemed to have an unlimited supply of phone numbers and email accounts. The constant contact was wearing me down psychologically. Even though I knew Marcus's messages were manipulative, he had a way of targeting my insecurities and making me second-guess myself. Michael noticed the effect Marcus's harassment was having on me. Amanda, he said one evening when I seemed particularly distracted. You've been different lately. More anxious, more withdrawn. Is this about Marcus? I had been trying to shield Michael from the worst of Marcus's behavior, but I realized that my stress was affecting our relationship. He's been escalating his contact, I admitted. More emails, text messages from different numbers. It's getting harder to ignore. Show me, Michael said firmly. I showed him the emails and text messages, and Michael's expression grew increasingly grim as he read them. Amanda, this is psychological warfare, he said when he finished reading. He's trying to make you doubt yourself and your relationship with me. I know that logically, I said. But he's good at finding my weak spots. What do you mean? He knows I'm ambitious about my career. He knows I sometimes worry about whether I'm settling for a safe relationship instead of taking risks. He's taking those insecurities and amplifying them. Michael was quiet for a moment, then said, Amanda, do you ever worry that you're settling by being with me? The question caught me off guard because it was exactly what Marcus had been trying to make me question. No, I said immediately. Michael, you're not safe because you're boring or limiting. You're safe because you're trustworthy and supportive. There's a difference. But Marcus is trying to make you think there isn't? Exactly. He's taking the fact that our relationship is healthy and stable and trying to make me see it as boring and settling. That's incredibly manipulative, Michael said angrily. He's trying to destroy your happiness by making you question good things about our relationship. That conversation helped me understand more clearly what Marcus was doing. He wasn't just trying to win me back. He was trying to sabotage my ability to be happy with anyone else. 2 months before the wedding, Marcus's behavior took a disturbing turn. He somehow obtained a copy of our wedding invitation and sent his own message to our guest list. I only found out about it when my sister Emma called me, furious and concerned. Amanda, what the hell is wrong with your ex-boyfriend? She demanded when I answered the phone. My stomach dropped. What do you mean? What did he do? He sent me an email about your wedding. Actually, he sent it to a bunch of people on your guest list. It's completely inappropriate and honestly kind of creepy. What did the email say? I asked, though I was dreading the answer. Emma read me Marcus's message. Dear friends and family of Amanda, I hope this message finds you well. As someone who cares deeply about Amanda's happiness and has known her intimately, I felt compelled to reach out before her upcoming wedding. Those of you who knew Amanda during our relationship are aware of how ambitious and remarkable she is. She has always been destined for extraordinary things, and she deserves a partner who can match her drive and provide her with the life she's truly capable of having. While I'm sure Michael is a decent person, I'm concerned that Amanda may be making a decision based on comfort and security, rather than genuine passion and shared ambition. Sometimes people choose safe relationships when they're afraid to pursue what they really want. I'm not trying to cause drama or interfere inappropriately. I simply believe that people who love Amanda should encourage her to carefully consider whether this marriage represents her best future or whether she's settling for less than she deserves. As someone who knows Amanda's true potential better than anyone, I felt obligated to share these concerns with the people who care about her most. With sincere regard for Amanda's happiness, Marcus Donovan. I felt physically sick as Emma read the message. Marcus had somehow obtained our guest list and was actively trying to undermine my wedding by making my own family and friends question my relationship. Emma, I said when she finished reading, please tell me you didn't respond to him. Of course I didn't respond, Emma said angrily. But Amanda, this is absolutely insane. Who does this? What kind of person tries to sabotage someone's wedding? Someone who can't accept that the relationship is over, I said quietly. Amanda, you need to call the police. This has gone way beyond normal ex-boyfriend behavior. I know, but Emma, the email itself isn't threatening. It's manipulative and inappropriate, but Marcus was careful not to write anything that could be considered criminal. What about harassment, stalking? I've been documenting everything, I said, but most of what he's done exists in a legal gray area, sending flowers, appearing in public places, even contacting people we both know. It's all technically legal even though it's clearly harassment. After I hung up with Emma, I spent the rest of the evening calling family members and friends who had received Marcus's email. Most people were supportive and disgusted by his behavior, but a few seemed genuinely concerned about whether there might be some truth to his concerns. My Aunt Patricia actually said, "Honey, I didn't know you had such a serious relationship before Michael. Are you sure you've given yourself enough time to process that relationship before getting married?" The fact that Marcus's manipulation was working on anyone made me furious and more determined than ever to stop him. That night, I told Michael about the email to our guests. He was angrier than I had ever seen him. "Amanda, this is insane," he said, pacing around our living room. "He's trying to turn your own family against your marriage. We can't just document this. We need to take action." "What kind of action?" I asked. "I want to confront him. I want to tell him that if he doesn't stop harassing you, he's going to have to deal with me." "Michael, no," I said firmly. "That's exactly what he wants. He wants you to get emotional and do something that makes you look unstable or aggressive. So we just let him continue to sabotage our wedding?" "No," I said, making a decision that would prove crucial later. "We let him continue to reveal his true character while we document everything. And if he escalates to the point where he actually breaks the law, we'll have overwhelming evidence of his pattern of harassment." That's when I made another important decision. I called a private investigator named Sarah Martinez, who specialized in stalking and harassment cases. "I need to know everything about Marcus Donovan," I told Sarah during our first meeting. "His employment history, his dating history, his financial situation, any legal issues. If he's been harassing me this systematically, I suspect there might be other women who have had similar experiences." Sarah was a former police detective who had started her own practice focusing on cases involving domestic violence and stalking. She understood immediately what I was dealing with. "Amanda," she said after I showed her my documentation of Marcus's behavior, "men like this rarely limit their controlling behavior to just one relationship. The pattern you're describing, the love bombing, the escalating control, the inability to accept rejection, suggests someone with a serious personality disorder." "What do you think we'll find if we investigate him?" "Probably other victims," Sarah said grimly, "and possibly criminal behavior that gives us leverage to stop him." I hired Sarah to conduct a comprehensive investigation into Marcus's background. While she worked on that, Marcus continued his campaign against my wedding. 6 weeks before the wedding, he started showing up at wedding-related events. When Michael and I went to our cake tasting, Marcus was at the same bakery, claiming to be planning a surprise party for a friend. When we had our rehearsal dinner location meeting, Marcus happened to be having lunch at the same restaurant. He never approached us directly, but his presence was clearly meant to be noticed and to create anxiety. The message was clear. He knew our schedule. He could appear anywhere we went, and there was nothing we could do to stop him. "He's everywhere," I told Michael after Marcus appeared at 3 different wedding-related appointments in 1 week. "It's like he has access to our calendar." "How is that possible?" Michael asked. "I don't know. Maybe he's following us, or maybe he's gotten access to information through the vendors somehow." The constant surveillance was taking a psychological toll. I started feeling paranoid and looking over my shoulder everywhere we went. I began second-guessing our vendor choices and changing appointment times at the last minute, trying to avoid predictable patterns that Marcus could follow. 4 weeks before the wedding, Sarah Martinez called with the results of her investigation into Marcus's background. What she had found was both shocking and incredibly useful. "Amanda," Sarah said when I arrived at her office, Marcus Donovan is not the successful businessman he pretends to be. In fact, he's been living a lie for years. She spread a series of documents across her desk. First, his employment history. Marcus was fired from his previous job at Morrison & Associates for sexual harassment. A female colleague filed a complaint claiming he had been making unwanted advances and refusing to accept her rejection of his romantic interest. I looked at the termination letter, which cited inappropriate conduct toward colleagues and failure to maintain professional boundaries. Second, Sarah continued, he's been served with a restraining order by another ex-girlfriend, Jennifer Walsh. She filed the order 18 months ago, claiming Marcus had been stalking her after their breakup. Sarah handed me a copy of the restraining order application. Jennifer's description of Marcus's behavior was eerily similar to what I was experiencing. Flowers, unwanted contact, appearing at places she frequented, and attempts to undermine her subsequent relationships. Third, and most importantly, Sarah said, Marcus is currently under investigation by his employer for embezzling company funds. She showed me financial records that had been obtained through legal channels. Marcus has been using his corporate credit card for personal expenses, including the flowers and gifts he's been sending you. He's also been falsifying expense reports and diverting client payments into his personal accounts. The evidence was overwhelming. Marcus wasn't just a manipulative ex-boyfriend. He was a predator with a history of harassing women and a criminal who was stealing money to fund his elaborate deceptions. How much money are we talking about? I asked. Based on the financial records I could access, at least $50,000 over the past 18 months, possibly more. Does his employer know about this? They're conducting an internal investigation, but it's been moving slowly. However, if someone were to provide them with additional evidence of how Marcus has been using stolen funds, it might accelerate their timeline. Sarah looked at me meaningfully. Amanda, this investigation gives you significant leverage. Marcus isn't just harassing you. He's committing felony embezzlement. If he knew that you had evidence of his financial crimes, he might be motivated to leave you alone. Or it might make him more desperate and dangerous, I replied. That's possible, Sarah agreed. But it also gives you options. You could report his embezzlement to his employer and law enforcement, which would immediately create serious legal problems for him. I thought about Sarah's suggestion, but something told me to wait. Marcus was planning something for our wedding day, I could feel it, and I wanted to catch him in the act with witnesses present. Sarah, I said, I want to hold on to this information for now, but I want you to prepare a comprehensive report that documents everything. His harassment of me, his history with other women, and his financial crimes. If Marcus escalates his behavior at our wedding, I want to be ready to destroy him completely. Sarah understood my strategy. You want to let him hang himself? Exactly. Marcus thinks he's been clever and untouchable. I want him to reveal his true character in front of an audience, and then I want to present evidence that destroys his entire life. 2 weeks before the wedding, Marcus's messages became more desperate and frequent. He was sending multiple emails and texts every day, and the tone was becoming increasingly frantic. Amanda, please don't do this. You know we belong together. You know what we had was real. I can't watch you throw your life away. I won't let you make this mistake. You're running out of time to come to your senses. Don't make me take more drastic action. The last message felt like a threat, and I forwarded it immediately to Sarah Martinez. He's planning something for your wedding day, Sarah said when I called her. The language suggests he's prepared to take action to stop the ceremony. Good, I said. Let him try. I'll be ready. The week before our wedding, Marcus called me from a new number. I almost didn't answer, but something told me I should hear what he had to say. Amanda, his voice was strained and desperate when I picked up. I need to see you. We need to talk before you make the biggest mistake of your life. Marcus, I said calmly, there's nothing to talk about. I'm marrying Michael on Saturday, and nothing you say will change that. You don't understand, Marcus said, his voice rising. I've spent 2 years waiting for you to realize what you're throwing away. I've been patient, I've been understanding, but I can't watch you destroy your future. My future is with Michael, I said firmly. Our relationship ended 2 years ago, and you need to accept that. I'll never accept that, Marcus said, his mask of reasonableness finally slipping completely. You belong with me, Amanda. You know you do, and I'm not going to let you pretend otherwise anymore. Then you're going to be very disappointed, I replied. We'll see about that, Marcus said before hanging up. The threat was unmistakable. Marcus was planning to disrupt our wedding, and I needed to be prepared. I called our wedding venue and security company to brief them on the situation. I provided photos of Marcus and instructions to not allow him access to any wedding events. I also arranged for additional security, specifically trained in dealing with stalking situations. But deep down, I hoped Marcus would try to crash our wedding. I wanted him to reveal his true character in front of 150 witnesses, and I wanted to have the perfect opportunity to destroy him with the evidence Sarah had gathered. Wedding day arrived on a beautiful Saturday in June. Michael and I had chosen Willow's Lodge, a historic venue outside Seattle with beautiful gardens and a reception hall that could accommodate our guest list. The morning preparations went smoothly. I was getting ready with my bridesmaids in the bridal suite, and Michael was preparing with his groomsmen in a separate area of the venue. Security was in place, our families had been briefed about the Marcus situation, and everything seemed to be going according to plan. The ceremony itself was perfect. I walked down the aisle to Michael, who was waiting at the altar with tears in his eyes. Our officiant, a close friend who had known us both throughout our relationship, delivered a ceremony that was personal and meaningful. When we exchanged vows, I felt overwhelming gratitude that I had found someone who loved and supported me unconditionally. The contrast between my healthy relationship with Michael and the toxic dynamic I had experienced with Marcus couldn't have been clearer. Amanda, Michael said during his vows, you are my partner in every sense of the word. You challenge me to be better while accepting me exactly as I am. You pursue your own dreams while supporting mine. You make me feel like the luckiest man alive just by choosing to share your life with me. As we kissed to seal our marriage, I thought about how different my life might have been if I had stayed with Marcus. Instead of a partnership based on mutual respect and support, I would have had a relationship based on control and manipulation. The reception began with cocktails in the garden while photographers captured family portraits. Everything was proceeding beautifully, and I began to hope that maybe Marcus had finally accepted reality and decided not to interfere. I should have known better. Michael and I had just finished our first dance and were mingling with our guests when I noticed a commotion near the entrance to the reception hall. Our security guard was speaking intensely into his radio, and several guests were looking toward the main doors with confused expressions. Then I saw him. Marcus had somehow gotten past the initial security checkpoint and was walking purposefully through the reception area. He was dressed in an expensive tuxedo that made him look like he belonged at the wedding, and he was carrying something in his hand that I couldn't immediately identify. Ladies and gentlemen, Marcus said loudly, his voice carrying across the reception hall. I'm sorry to interrupt this beautiful celebration, but I have something important to say. The music stopped, and 150 guests turned to stare at this uninvited speaker. Michael moved immediately to stand beside me, his face pale with anger and embarrassment. Marcus was holding a wireless microphone that he had somehow obtained, and he looked completely confident as he addressed our wedding guests. For those of you who don't know me, Marcus continued with a smile, I'm Marcus Donovan, and Amanda and I have a significant history together, a history that I think is relevant to what's happening here today. Murmurs of confusion and concern rippled through the crowd. My parents looked horrified. Michael's family appeared shocked, and our friends were clearly unsure what was happening. I didn't want to do this, Marcus said, his voice taking on a tone of reasonable concern. But I can't stand by and watch Amanda make the biggest mistake of her life. He turned to look directly at me, and his expression was a mixture of desperation and absolute certainty. Amanda, he said, his voice now tender and personal despite the public setting. You know you belong with me. You know what we had was real, and you know you're settling for someone who can't give you the life you deserve. The audacity was breathtaking. Marcus was publicly humiliating Michael and me in front of our families and friends, and he seemed to genuinely believe he was doing something romantic and heroic. You deserve someone who can match your ambition, Marcus continued, gesturing dismissively toward Michael. Someone who can give you everything you want. Someone who understands what you're capable of achieving. Michael stepped forward, his voice shaking with controlled rage. You need to leave, right now. Marcus ignored him completely, keeping his focus on me. Amanda, I've been patient. I've waited for you to realize that this isn't what you really want, but I can't wait anymore. He extended his hand toward me, as if expecting me to take it. Come with me, and let's stop pretending this is your real life. The entire room was silent, waiting to see what would happen next. This was the moment I had been preparing for, the moment when Marcus would reveal his true character in front of an audience and give me the perfect opportunity to destroy him. I walked calmly to the front of the room, took the microphone from Marcus's hands before he could react, and smiled at our guests. Thank you all for being patient with this interruption, I said clearly. I think this is actually the perfect time to share something important with all of you. Marcus looked confused, clearly not expecting me to engage with his grand gesture rather than simply having him removed. Marcus is absolutely right that we have a history, I said, turning to face him directly. And I think our guests should know exactly what that history looks like. I pulled out my phone and connected it to the venue's sound system that we had been using for our wedding music. For the past 6 months, I announced to the room, Marcus has been stalking and harassing me. He's sent unwanted flowers, emails, and text messages. He's shown up uninvited at places where he knew I would be. He's tried to manipulate my family and friends into questioning my relationship with my husband. Marcus's confident expression was starting to falter as he realized this wasn't going according to his plan. But what our guests don't know, I continued, is that I've been documenting everything. Every flower delivery, every inappropriate message, every attempt to sabotage my relationship. I activated the slideshow I had prepared and connected to the venue's projection system. Screenshots of Marcus's emails, photos of his flower deliveries, and records of his harassment appeared on screens around the reception hall. This is what obsession looks like, I told our guests. This is what happens when someone can't accept that a relationship is over and becomes convinced that they have the right to control another person's life. Marcus was backing toward the exit, clearly realizing that his romantic gesture had become a public exposure of his stalking behavior. But Marcus's harassment of me is just the beginning of the story, I said, nodding to Sarah Martinez, who was standing near the back of the room with a folder of documents. Because while Marcus has been trying to convince me that he's successful and worthy of my attention, he's actually been living a lie. Sarah approached the front of the room and handed me the investigation file. Marcus was fired from his previous job for sexually harassing a female colleague who rejected his romantic advances, I announced. He's been served with a restraining order by another ex-girlfriend for stalking behavior identical to what he's done to me. The color was draining from Marcus's face as he realized the scope of what I was revealing. And most importantly, I continued, Marcus has been embezzling money from his current employer to fund his expensive lifestyle and his harassment campaign against me. I held up copies of the financial records Sarah had obtained. The flowers he sent me, paid for with stolen company funds. The expensive gifts, also stolen. The success he's been bragging about, built on lies and criminal behavior. Marcus looked like he was going to be sick. He had expected to disrupt my wedding and win me back with a romantic gesture. Instead, he was being exposed as a stalker and criminal in front of 150 witnesses. The total amount Marcus has embezzled is over $50,000, I announced. He's been using his corporate credit card for personal expenses, falsifying expense reports, and diverting client payments into his personal accounts. The room was completely silent as the implications of what I was revealing sank in. Marcus, I said, looking directly at him, you were right about one thing. I do deserve someone who can give me the life I want. That's why I married Michael, a man who is honest, kind, and genuinely successful. A man who doesn't need to steal money or harass women to feel important. I turned to address our guests. Ladies and gentlemen, what you just witnessed wasn't a romantic gesture. It was the culmination of 6 months of criminal harassment by someone who refuses to accept that he doesn't own me. The room erupted in applause, but I wasn't finished. Security, I called out. Please escort Mr. Donovan from the premises. And Marcus, I looked at him one final time. The police and your employer will be receiving copies of all this evidence on Monday morning. I hope you have a good lawyer. As security approached him, Marcus made one last, desperate attempt to regain control of the situation. Amanda, he called out, his voice cracking with desperation. You don't understand what you're doing. We belong together. You'll realize that eventually, and when you do, I won't be here anymore. Good, I said simply. That's exactly what I want. As security escorted a humiliated Marcus from the reception hall, our guests rose in a thunderous standing ovation. People were cheering not just for the drama, but for the fact that I had turned his attempt to sabotage my wedding into a moment of complete vindication. Michael took the microphone from me and pulled me into his arms. Ladies and gentlemen, he announced to our guests, my wife, everyone. I have never been prouder to be married to such an incredible, strong, brilliant woman. The rest of our wedding reception was absolutely perfect. Our guests couldn't stop talking about how I had handled the situation, and many people said they had never seen someone turn a potential disaster into such a triumphant moment. My friend Sarah from college summed it up perfectly. Amanda, I've never seen anyone destroy a stalker so completely while wearing a wedding dress. That was epic. My father, who had always been protective but sometimes worried that I was too trusting, pulled me aside during the reception. Amanda, he said with tears in his eyes, I am so proud of how you handled that situation. You were strategic, you were prepared, and you were strong. That man never stood a chance against you. The most satisfying part was watching how our guests rallied around us. Instead of being embarrassed or upset by the disruption, people seemed energized by witnessing justice in action. The story of how I defeated Marcus at my own wedding instantly became part of our family lore. But the real satisfaction came in the weeks that followed, when the consequences of Marcus's behavior fully materialized. Michael and I left for our honeymoon in Paris the next morning, and I arranged for all of Sarah's evidence to be delivered to the appropriate authorities while we were away. 2 days into our honeymoon, Sarah called to update me on the developments. Amanda, she said, Marcus was arrested yesterday for embezzlement. His employer terminated him immediately, and they're cooperating fully with the criminal investigation. What about the restraining order violation from crashing our wedding? That resulted in additional charges. His lawyer is trying to negotiate a plea deal, but given the amount of money involved and his history of harassment, he's looking at serious jail time. How serious? Probably 2 to 3 years, plus restitution to his employer. And the criminal conviction means he'll never work in financial services again. The consequences went far beyond legal troubles. Word of Marcus's behavior had spread throughout his professional and social circles in Seattle. His carefully constructed image as a successful, charming businessman had been completely destroyed. People who had known Marcus socially were coming forward with their own stories of inappropriate behavior. Several women contacted Sarah to report similar harassment experiences, and his former colleagues at previous jobs began sharing stories about his unethical behavior that they had previously kept quiet. Marcus's entire social and professional network collapsed within weeks of our wedding. His reputation was destroyed, his career was over, and his criminal behavior had been exposed to everyone who had ever known him. 6 weeks after our wedding, Marcus's lawyer contacted me through Sarah, asking if I would be willing to accept a public apology in exchange for supporting a reduced sentence. His client is genuinely remorseful, the lawyer claimed during a phone call with Sarah. He's seeking therapy for his obsessive behavior, and he realizes that what he did was wrong. I declined without hesitation. Marcus had multiple opportunities over 6 months to accept that our relationship was over and leave me alone, I told Sarah to relay to his lawyer. Instead, he chose to escalate his harassment, culminating in publicly humiliating me and my husband at our wedding. He can deal with the full consequences of his choices. Marcus was ultimately sentenced to 30 months in prison for embezzlement and harassment. He was also ordered to pay full restitution to his former employer and to have no contact with me for 10 years. The restraining order violation from the wedding resulted in an additional year added to his sentence, and his pattern of harassment toward multiple women was considered an aggravating factor during sentencing. The judge's comments during sentencing were particularly satisfying. Mr. Donovan, your behavior toward Miss Chen and other women represents a disturbing pattern of manipulation and control. Your inability to accept rejection and your escalating campaign of harassment demonstrate that you pose a genuine threat to any woman who has the misfortune of becoming the object of your attention. 1 year after our wedding, Michael and I received an update from Sarah about Marcus's situation. He had been released on parole after serving 18 months of his sentence, but he was struggling to rebuild his life. His criminal record made it nearly impossible for him to find employment in his previous field. He was living with his parents in Spokane, working part-time at a customer service call center, and had been ordered to continue therapy as a condition of his parole. Several mutual acquaintances reported that Marcus appeared to be a broken man. The confident, manipulative person who had tried to control my life had been replaced by someone who seemed genuinely defeated by the consequences of his actions. I didn't take pleasure in his suffering, but I was satisfied that he had faced appropriate consequences for his behavior. More importantly, I was proud that I had protected myself and other women from his manipulation. The experience taught me valuable lessons about trusting my instincts, the importance of documentation when dealing with toxic people, and the power of strategic thinking over emotional reactions. If I had simply ignored Marcus's harassment or responded emotionally to his wedding sabotage, he might have been able to dismiss his behavior as a misunderstanding or a romantic gesture gone wrong. But by documenting everything and exposing his pattern of criminal behavior, I ensured that there were real consequences for his actions. The wedding video became legendary among our friends and family. The moment when I turned Marcus's sabotage attempt into his own public destruction is now part of our family's mythology. My nieces and nephews love hearing this story of how Aunt Amanda defeated the bad guy at her own wedding. Michael often jokes that he married the most badass woman in Seattle, and honestly, after everything we've been through, I'm inclined to agree with him. 2 years after our wedding, Michael and I are happier than ever. We bought a beautiful house in Queen Anne, I received another promotion to Senior Marketing Director, and we're planning to start a family next year. We occasionally hear updates about Marcus through mutual acquaintances. Apparently, his parole officer requires him to attend regular therapy sessions, and he's been diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder and obsessive-compulsive tendencies. While I hope he gets the help he needs, I'm grateful that he's no longer my problem to deal with. The restraining order ensures that he can't contact me for several more years, and his criminal record means that any future romantic partners can easily discover his history of harassment. Most importantly, the experience strengthened my relationship with Michael and taught me that I'm capable of protecting myself and the people I love against any threat. The story of our wedding has become a source of inspiration for other women dealing with stalking and harassment. I've been contacted by several women who heard about my experience and wanted advice on how to handle similar situations. My advice is always the same. Document everything, trust your instincts, and don't be afraid to expose toxic behavior when the opportunity arises. Predators like Marcus rely on their victims being too embarrassed or intimidated to fight back. When you're prepared with evidence and willing to reveal their true character, they often provide their own downfall. The most satisfying victories aren't the ones where you have to scheme and plot revenge. They're the ones where you simply stand back and let destructive people reveal their true nature while you're prepared with documentation and witnesses. Marcus thought he was saving me from making a mistake. Instead, he gave me the perfect opportunity to save myself and other women from him. He thought he was demonstrating his love and devotion. Instead, he demonstrated his criminal behavior and psychological instability to 150 witnesses. And honestly, that was the best wedding gift I could have asked for. The experience also reinforced how important it is to choose partners who respect your autonomy and support your independence. The contrast between Marcus's controlling behavior and Michael's supportive partnership couldn't have been clearer. Michael never once suggested that I should handle the Marcus situation differently. He supported my decision to document everything, respected my choice to wait for the right moment to expose Marcus, and trusted my judgment throughout the entire ordeal. "You knew what you were doing from the beginning," Michael told me months later. "You were always 3 steps ahead of him, and you let him destroy himself while you gathered evidence. It was brilliant." That's what healthy love looks like. A partner who trusts your intelligence, supports your decisions, and celebrates your strength rather than feeling threatened by it. If you're dealing with an ex who won't accept that your relationship is over, or if you're in a relationship with someone who tries to control your choices, please know that you deserve better. Document inappropriate behavior. Trust your instincts about what feels wrong, and don't let anyone convince you that their possessiveness is proof of their love. Real love supports your independence, celebrates your success, and would never dream of trying to sabotage your happiness when you choose someone else. Marcus spent 6 months trying to convince me that Michael wasn't good enough for me. What he actually did was prove every day that he wasn't good enough for any woman, anywhere, ever. And now, he has a criminal record that will remind him of that fact for the rest of his life. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe for more tales of toxic people getting exactly what they deserve. Share your own experiences with obsessive exes or controlling partners in the comments. I read every single one, and your stories help other people realize they're not alone in dealing with this kind of behavior. Remember, when someone shows you who they really are through their actions, believe them. And when they give you the opportunity to expose their true character to the world, don't hesitate to take it. You deserve to be with someone who celebrates your success, respects your choices, and would never dream of trying to sabotage your happiness. Don't settle for anything less, and don't let anyone convince you that control and manipulation are expressions of love. They're not. They're expressions of insecurity, entitlement, and psychological dysfunction. And people who behave that way deserve to face the full consequences of their choices.